folks a chance to join here.
Oh,
Hey,
good.
Graham, are we going to have a full basketball season?
You know, Bill, that's the first time I've been asked that question.
Yeah, thought I'd ask it every time.
You know, a couple of thoughts there. The NCAA is supposed to come out with an update in mid-September on, you know, if they foresee the season starting on time. There's been some talks about the Big East potentially going to a bubble system like the NBA if a lot of the schools were online anyway. If you want my 2 cents, which is sometimes only worth one, I think we'll be lucky to start in January. I find it unlikely we'll play the non-conference season, but I hope I'm wrong. You know, unfortunately, the cases with Notre Dame and North Carolina this week don't bode well for what we're going to do, but we will see. I'm certainly hopeful.
What's happening with Notre Dame?
Good crowd, and I expect more to join us, and really appreciate all of you joining us. This is a program I've looked forward to for a long time, and I've got a couple brief announcements and then want to acknowledge some special guests on the call. If you can remain muted until we open it up for questions and answers, I would appreciate that. We've got some great speakers coming up. One of my best professors that I've ever had will speak to us next week. Mark Leary from Duke University will speak to us on the topic of intellectual humility. We've got Matt Painter, Purdue coach, September 3rd. We've got a wonderful discussion on race on September 10th. Steve Lavin, former UCLA basketball coach, will join us September 17th. And that'll be good, actually, because we should have an update from the NCAA and what we're doing in terms of basketball. So that'll be timely. And then a couple other programs after that. And I remind all of our guests right now, all of our meetings are open for you to join. So please do so. We have postponed all in-person meetings till October 1. Your next president, Eric Steele, will make the decision from there. And we've also suspended all all dues until October 1 as well. I want to thank everyone. We have almost reached our campaign goal. We've raised $97,000 of the $105,000 of our goal. I've mentioned I'm going to stay on until we hit that goal, so that should motivate you to get it done by October 1st so you have a new president. But really appreciate all the support. I also want to thank Trent Cowles, who just volunteered yesterday to be our September sponsor. So if you see Trent, please thank him. And at this time, I do want to call out some special guests that I see. Let's see. I'd first be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my mom, who I believe is on the call. Mom, are you there?
I am, Graham, and I'm multitasking, but I'm enjoying. Thank you for sending me the link.
Okay, don't share any dirt on me during the call.
Oh, there's no dirt on you. No, not at all. Love you, son.
Thank you, Mom. Charlie Moyer is also on the call. Charlie has been a great supporter of the work we've done with Mrs. Core. Charlie is past dean of the business school at Wake Forest and at the University of Louisville. He still teaches finance down there, and he has been one of the great mentors that I've ever had. So Charlie, appreciate you joining us.
Great to be here. Graham was the best development officer I ever had. One of the best in the world.
I've paid these folks to say nice things about me. We have Joe Gentry from Butler Athletics, who went to Butler along with Alex. We have my friend Phyllis Sambuco, who's joining us from New York City. And I think we have some of the Jamaican contingent on. Is that correct?
Yes, Graham. We are 5 in number. Myself, Sonia, Pam, Bev, and Janet. Happy to be here as usual.
Thank you. And if you'll send your meeting link again, I'd like to join. I wasn't able to last night with
Okay.
soccer practice. I also see Lloyd Wright from WFYI on the call. Jennifer Stringer, who was my wonderful assistant at Butler. She has left me for greener pastures, although I'm going to try to recruit her back. Beth Narn, formerly from Candles, who's the Candles Museum, has been very involved. If I missed anyone, do you want to chime in? And Patty Lamb, who is my current assistant, who is just phenomenal. So Patty, thank you for joining us. I want to give a lot of time to our speakers today, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. We're fortunate. This is the third time I think we've had Ted Green speak to us. Ted, as you know, I won't go through his biography because many of you have heard it before, but Ted is an award-winning filmmaker who has just produced some great films on the Super Bowl here in Indianapolis, on Slick Leonard, on Roger Brown, on Crispus Attucks High School, and he'll talk more, but the EVA Core film, I think, surpassed all of our expectations with the number of awards it's won and the acclaim it's won. And then Alex Core, who's a great friend of mine, who is the son of the late EVA Core, who's a podiatrist in Lebanon, Indiana, and a Butler graduate, a big Butler basketball fan. And so today, Ted and Alex are going to share. It's been a little more than a year since Mrs. Core passed. They're going to share some key updates on the film, certainly its relevance given everything that's happened in our country over the last year, updates on the film and some of the awards it's won. And then, as I mentioned, we've got a special announcement. Actually, I think two, because Alex has maybe a giveaway here at the end. But Ted and Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're honored to have you here today.
Go ahead, Ted.
Okay, am I up here?
You are.
My hair look good? All right, good. That's the important thing. All right, thank you so much, Graham, for that warm welcome. And thank you behind the scenes, Miss Taylor Jacoby. And thanks to the Kiwanis Club in general for having me back for a third time. This time I'll serve more as a straight man, a setup man for the main attraction, my friend Alex. Our plan is that I'll talk for about 10 minutes and then I'll turn it over to Alex. And then together we will introduce the latest part of the project that Graham alluded to, something we are enormously excited about. And then we'll be happy to take any questions. But first, we'd like to show a very short video that captures some of the highlights of the 4-year EVA project.
Sometimes the end of the story,
Mom, I told our story.
is the beginning of the journey. Since the documentary EVA A-7063 debuted in 2018, it's been broadcast more than 1,000 times over 90% of the United States. It's screened to live audiences more than 100 times, including in many of the top U.S. markets, and been honored with a host of national awards. Thousands of students have attended special events such as the EVA Core Peace Garden at Newfields and the EVA Experience at the Indiana Historical Society.
They feel this personal connection now to this big piece of our history.
And the EVA Virtual Reality exhibit is giving students a three-dimensional tour of Auschwitz, technology that has amazed educators, Holocaust experts, and many more.
This was the ultimate experience of understanding the human story of the Holocaust.
The biggest impact is still to come. Recently, the EVA Educational Toolkit was donated to every middle and high school in Indiana as we prepare to commemorate January 27th, 2020, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, as EVA Education Day across the state.
We are free! We are free!
500,000 students will be inspired by EVA's timeless messages.
Every time you're with her, you're learning.
Ladies and gentlemen, the witness is no longer, but we must become the witnesses to the witness.
The journey continues.
She rose and she lives and she inspires.
WFYI, Ted Green Films and our wonderful supporters are proud to help keep this historic Hoosiers legacy alive.
She lives. She lives.
All right, thank you, Taylor. I hope people were able to see and hear that. All right, I'm not going to start at the very beginning because I don't want to have to praise Graham yet again for his tiny little contribution of introducing me to EVA in the first place. Instead, I'd like to start after we created the documentary because that's when the real impact came. And as always, it was all credit must go to EVA herself. Quick little backstory. For my previous documentary with WFYI about Crispus Attucks High School, we received a very generous contribution from the Lilly Endowment. So when we started the EVA project, naturally we came calling to them again. I was there. I think Lloyd Wright is on the call. He was there. A couple other. Frankly, they said they were very pleased with the Attucks documentary per se, but they criticized us for not doing more with it, not getting that kind of widespread, long-lasting community impact that the subject really deserved. And the fact is, they were right. They challenged us to do something special with EVA, and I have to say, thank goodness they did. We premiered EVA A-7063 at a sold-out Clues Hall. You saw some of that there in April of 2018. And the very next day, we went back to work. Jessica Chapman, WFY's EVA Impact Manager, led the charge, and every department at the station contributed. We entered film festivals around the country and were fortunate to win several Best of Fest awards. We held screenings all around Indiana, especially Indianapolis, Terre Haute, Bloomington, Evansville, Fort Wayne, Franklin, you name it. And we hosted several special there and at new fields, such as the EVA Corps Peace Garden. I think you saw in the video Eva doing some of her little fist bumps. On the strength of that, we decided to go all in and then fly Eva to Baltimore to be the keynote speaker at what's called National Marketplace for APT, American Public Television. APT is more or less the umbrella over the 350 PBS stations nationwide. And all these stations send their top brass to the marketplace to show their wares and choose which programming they're going to pick up for the coming year. So it was a huge opportunity, and of course, Eva killed it. We sat her with the reps of the biggest stations from New York, Boston, LA, Philadelphia, Chicago, and this little Indiana octogenarian had them eating out of her hand. And then her speech, it was pretty much like every Eva speech, complete rapt attention. We had all these station presidents standing in line to get a selfie with her, like little kids waiting on a star athlete. The result of that was that 95% of those stations picked up the documentary, and during the months of April and May of 2019 alone, it aired more than 1,000 times, including multiple showings in all of the top markets. And that kind of coverage and distribution is very rare. It just doesn't happen for this kind of a one-off show, especially one, from a mid-sized market like ours. And again, this is not due to the filmmaker or the station. Really, the credit has to go to Eva. She has that power. And I think the coolest thing was that she got to see it. Alice can speak to this better than I can, but I think it really meant a lot to her, especially during, some really difficult months for her health-wise. She got to experience the crowds, and they didn't call nothing. She got to see people learn her full story, her personal story, much of it for the first time. And then she got to see the awards that came in, awards that in truth weren't for the film, but rather for her remarkable impact. One example I love that is that we were at the Regional Emmy Awards in Cleveland, and we were fortunate to win 7 Emmys, including for Best Documentary. Unfortunately, Eva couldn't be there in person for health reasons, but she and Alex watched the live feed on her iPhone. There she is. Yeah, she was all about her iPhone. And then during my acceptance speech, I got, I don't know, there were probably 500 people there. I got them to shout, "Hi, Eva." so that she could hear it loud and clear in her Terre Haute kitchen there. And as soon as we all got home, I drove over and I gave her the award. It was definitely hers. I think we have a picture that she is. But all of that, all of that still was more or less a one-time thing. I mean, there's impact, but it's momentary. We took the endowments challenge head on, and we sought something that was longer lasting. And I like to think we were able to accomplish that with the EVA education program. In all humility, that program, more so than any film I've ever directed or any project I did in my 20 years in newspapers, it was that EVA education program has been the highlight of my professional career. EVA loved teaching the lessons of the Holocaust, so something like that could never happen again. Teaching her life lessons that she learned on her journey, lessons like empathy and forgiveness and moral courage. Traveling with EVA around the world, I was struck again and again by her power with young people, how she inspired them the best they could be, challenged them to think of the one thing they could do to make the world better. I mean, I know people say that stuff all the time, but suffice to say that this 4'9" Holocaust survivor, a survivor at 10 years old of the just macabre experiments of Dr. Joseph Mengele, this woman had street cred with these kids. When she spoke, they didn't just listen, they heard and they felt. I personally believe that Eva Kor, given her past, is the ultimate representation of the power a single person has to make a huge difference in the world. And she has this extra power of making people, especially young people, hurting people, people who have been marginalized or left out. She has this extra power to make them want to change the world too. So we created the EVA education program. It consists of a shortened version of the film. Each surviving death, published by a woman here in Indianapolis, Peggy Tierney. In fact, she just re-released the book in the UK, and it is number 3 among all books on the London Times bestseller list, which is really something. And then the third part was an educator's guide written by a woman on this call, my dear friend Beth Nairn. She did that, and it was based on the life lessons of Eva that I mentioned earlier. And then we also decided to push the envelope a little bit, and we worked for several months to create the EVA virtual reality tour, which takes people through headsets, you saw them in the video, 3-dimensionally to the places at Auschwitz that were most central to Eva's experience. I can't say this was all an instant hit. It took a lot of time and hard work. Beth can attest to that. And we were rookies at this. And we discovered that working with schools on a large scale was a little more difficult than we had imagined. But all in my opinion, on July 4th, 2019, when Eva passed away during one of her annual tours to Auschwitz, where she was doing what she loved most, teaching, sharing her message. When she passed away, obituaries ran around the world. And I think that the sudden lack of Eva put into such incredible relief the inspirational power of her life and the universal power of her messages. And I think people in Indiana in particular began to understand, we can't let this power go to waste. I mean, look around, look what's happening in our society. We need to bring the lessons of this historic Hoosier to the future, to the next generations. Very quickly after that, donations to the EVA education program started rolling in, including, thank you, from people here in this meeting. Schools began to sign up for our virtual reality so that Indiana Department of Education got involved, along with the Indiana Association of School Principals. I think I saw that Ina Shelley, the wonderful Ina Shelley, is on this call, and the Butler College of Education was immensely helpful in us getting the word out. And then we had 2 huge coups. Governor Holcomb proclaimed that January 27th, 2020, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, would be EVA Education Day across Indiana. And a big-hearted guy named Elliot Lewis donated EVA educational toolkits to every single middle and high school in the state. That's more than 1,000 schools serving nearly 750,000 students. those EVA Education Day festivities spurred more interest. I mean, this past February alone, really was in the space of about 20 days, we visited, Jessica Chapman and I visited 13 schools from Angola way up north, standing in front of 2,000 people, introducing your film, or accepting an award, that's quite an experience. But it doesn't hold a candle to when a shy 12-year-old, a kid the teachers say, hadn't opened his mouth all year, approaches you after a presentation and just wants to say thanks or shake your hand or tell you about something they're struggling with and how they think EVA's messages can help them. This kind of thing happened everywhere we went, and I'll say I'll never forget it as long as I live. As with everyone, the pandemic hit us hard. We've had to cancel dozens of school visits, special events, and screenings all over the country. But we used that time to put our educational materials up on PBS Learning Media, which is this massively popular national portal that teachers turn to frequently, especially in these times of e-learning. And WFYI and I also gifted all of our and the hundreds of hours and footage from the documentary, everything, to the Indiana Historical Society. Alongside the physical materials from EVA's house and office that Alex is donating, we'd like to think this will make for a pretty neat EVA exhibit scheduled to open next year, for which we are very grateful to the new president of the Historical Society, Jody Blankenship, and his team. Before I turn it over to Alex, I'd like to do the NASCAR thing and say a few more thanks. I mean, so many generous people made all this possible, from the usual suspects like the Lilly Endowment and the Simons and the Glicks and the Ephraimsons to hundreds of others who threw in what they could and more, including, again, people in this meeting. I've worked in a lot of places in my career, but nowhere have I found such community spirit as in Indianapolis. And I would say that spirit, that generosity, allowed us to capture EVA's legacy and messages and bottle them, such that now adults and children alike will be able to learn from this great Hoosier for posterity. Again, I thank you for this time. I'm now going to turn it over to Alex.
Thanks, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay? Good. So first of all, I want to say thanks to Graham Honecker. As Ted alluded to, really none of this would have happened if it wasn't for Graham sending me a letter in 2014, 15 that I almost threw away. And then, of course, I want to thank Ted Green and WFYI and Kiwanis Club of Indianapolis, and really appreciate everything that's happened over the last 3 or 4 years. In this day and age, particularly what's happened since March and then into May and June with the social unrest, I really think it's a shame that, my mom's not here to kind of help. I think her messages of humility, forgiveness, humanity, really would be, very, very appropriate to kind of get us through this tough time. And hopefully some of the things that Ted mentioned and other things that we're going to be doing will hopefully allow her legacy to continue. I could talk about a lot of interesting things. I think for me, one of the things that's been really a product of being a child of 2 Holocaust survivors. My dad's also a survivor. He's down the hall here at the hospital I work at. He's doing really well. But it's really just a sense of humor. And I think my parents' sense of humor got them through a lot of tough times. And I thought over the next, 10 minutes or so, 12 minutes, that I want to tell just a couple funny stories that I think would give you all maybe a different look at my parents. And I'll start off with my dad. I know this is mainly about my mother. But my dad, if you ever visited Candles Holocaust Museum, would always wear a Purdue hat and a Purdue sweatshirt. And there was about 10 years ago, a group of some 12, 13-year-old kids. My dad gives them a tour of the museum. And one of the kids says, Mr. Kaur, I have a comment. And my dad says, sure. And he always liked kids and still now likes people that are interesting, that are smart and intelligent. And so apparently this kid was pretty sharp, and he said, sure, Johnny, go ahead. And Johnny says, you know, boy, Mr. Core, you just have the worst luck in the world. Of course, my dad's in a Purdue hat, Purdue sweatshirt in a Holocaust museum in Terre Haute. And my dad said, well, Johnny, what do you mean? Why do I have really bad luck? Well, you were a Jew in Germany during World War II, and you're a Purdue fan here in the state of Indiana. So my father kind of took that as tongue in cheek, and I said, well, yeah, I'm a big Purdue fan, and it's been an interesting. He's still a big Purdue fan. He's got a Purdue hat on now. Just a couple other stories about my mom and sense of humor. My mom, as Ted mentioned, really delved a lot into social media. When she would get off a plane, she'd be a little kid checking her cell phone messages, checking Twitter. And initially, when she was on Twitter, she didn't know how to work Twitter. And so some people at the museum and I would help her, and she didn't really understand it. And then about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, one day I see a tweet and I go, oh, that's her. So she gradually became very proficient at using Twitter. And just a funny story, I always told her, you need to be careful on what you say on Twitter. And people are watching. She had some, in fact, we still have an account. She has over 35,000 people following her. And so this is about 2.5 years ago. I'm in a sports bar with my 92-year-old father watching Purdue and Michigan State basketball on a Saturday in Terre Haute in February. And my mom on a Saturday would typically leave the museum, go get groceries, and go home. And about 4:15, she calls me. She goes, I got a little bit of a problem. I go, okay, what's the problem? Well, I'm stuck in a car wash. I said, oh, okay, are you wet? No, I'm in my car, but I need to get my car washed. It just snowed here. Maybe you could help me. So I was in Terre Haute. I said, there's nobody there. No, there's nobody there. So I leave my dad at the sports bar. I'm driving to the car wash about 10 minutes away. I called the owner of the car wash and said, hey, my mom's stuck in your car wash. Okay, I'll meet you there. So I get there and I'm thinking, okay, I can see her car. The front door of the garage is closed. Back door of the garage is closed. And so I put my credit card in. I get her in her car. She goes, okay, I just want my car washed. I go, Mom, let's get you and the car out safely. So the guy shows up. He gets her car out. She gets a free car wash. Well, now she's driving home. I'm driving back to the sports bar to watch the second half of the Purdue-Michigan State game. So my mom's driving, and all of a sudden she gets a call from the Vigo County Sheriff. Eva, are you okay? Yeah, why? What do you mean? Well, apparently when she was in the car wash, she tweeted a picture of herself stuck in the car wash, gave the address. They had over 100 calls to 911 in Terre Haute to Vigo County. And people were very concerned about the well-being of my mom stuck in a car wash in Terre Haute. So the sheriff was calling because they had all these calls. So really from that point on, I never, I said, you can tweet whatever you want because people are looking out for you. And I thought, that's fine. At least she has a guardian angel, and that guardian angel is called Twitter. So, and a couple other things, just have been funny over the years. Years ago, when she published the book with Peggy Turney and Tanglewood Press, Surviving the Angel of Death, she gets a call, this is probably 10, 11 years ago, from a guy, and he's talking about making a motion picture out of the movie. And my mom says, look, you're very nice, but, I don't really have time for this. And he basically says, well, here, this is a friend of mine. You might know him. His name's Ed Asner. So my mom tells me the story, and I said, Mom, it's not Ed Asner, but go ahead and call him. So a couple of nights later, she calls us Ed Asner. It's the Ed Asner from Mary Tyler Moore, and we all know who Ed Asner is. And so Ed was on the phone with my mom for 4 hours that night, talking about the book and this and that. And so I would lose track of my mom. I said, don't call me at work unless it's an emergency. So several months later, I forgot where she was at. So she calls me at work. And she says, Ed wants to talk to you. I said, Ed who? What do you mean, Ed who? I'm out here in Los Angeles with Ed Asner. I said, okay. So Ed gets on there. He said, now you're a foot doctor, right? I said, yeah. He goes, well, put down my number in your phone because I want to make sure that you're in my circle of friends. I go, okay, I'll put you down your number. So Ed was an expert in hip replacements because he had 7 hip replacements. My mom was having problems with her hip. So instead of my mom over the next several months calling her doctor, she would call Ed Asner multiple times, and Ed would give her advice. So 6 months later, she has surgery. I'm on the East Coast. I'm working a basketball game. And my sister texts me, Mom's out of surgery. Everything's fine. And so I text a couple friends, hey, my mom's out of surgery. I accidentally text Ed Asner. 30 seconds later, my phone vibrates. I look down, it's Ed Asner's cell. I go, hello, and he goes, who the heck is this? I said, it's Alex Core. He goes, who the heck are you? I said, my mom's EVA Core. He goes, oh, the hip surgery was today. How'd that go? I said, well, it went really good. He goes, well, when are you going to come out here and look at my feet? So Ed became friends with the family, and obviously he was a narrator, you know, for the movie, and he did an incredible job. Couple other funny things. As you all know, my mom was the, I think, 2017 Grand Marshal in Indy 500, and we had a little problem before the race. The problem was that the Grand Marshal, my mom, couldn't get to the area where all the celebrities were going up the red carpet. So again, this is just my mom's sense of humor, funny life, funny things happening. So we had to get to the red carpet within an hour and a half of the start of the race. So we get about half mile from the red carpet outside of the track. My mom's mobility was limited, so she takes a nap. She takes a nap in the van. So now Ted and I and some other people were thinking, how can we get her to the red carpet? So we started seeing these little golf carts, beer trucks. So I commandeer this guy, Ted and I commandeer this guy and say, hey, you got no beer in there. Can we put a couple people in there? We need to go to the red carpet. He goes, red carpet? I said, yeah, we got somebody in this car that needs to go to the red carpet. He goes, well, I don't have any credentials. I go, we'll get you through. So make a long story short, my mom wakes up from her nap. She gets in the golf cart, and the guy looks at her. He says, I know, you're EVA Core. And he had apparently read a book, one of her books, or heard her lecture. So we get to the red carpet with this golf cart guy delivering beer, but he was delivering my mom. And we then are on the red carpet, but we're going the wrong way. Jake Gyllenhaal is behind us, and all of a sudden this guy with long hair, torn jeans, earrings, is shaking hands, and he sees my mom, and he goes, hey, baby, let's take a picture. And my mom kind of looks at me, and if anybody has ever heard my mom lecture, you know, she really would talk about that she too was prejudiced. Somebody like herself that had survived the Holocaust with prejudice. She didn't like guys with long hair. She didn't like guys with earrings. She didn't like guys with torn jeans. This guy had it all. And the reason she would tell the story when she would lecture, particularly to kids, that she too had to work on herself to make sure that she could appreciate people for what, you know, was within their being rather than their physical appearance. And I think it was a valuable teaching lesson for everybody. So she sees this guy on the red carpet. He's taking pictures. Cameras are going crazy. And I'm looking at him and I go, gosh, he looks familiar. How do I know him? He shakes my hand. He goes, hey, man, how you doing? And so we kind of go up in the pagoda and I'm just shaking my head and I'm thinking, who was that? And somebody on this call, I think Beth told me that who it was. And we get up and next thing you know, that was Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. The Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. And so I explained to my mom who he was. And so several hours later, my mom decides, because she's on Twitter and you know she's got time after the race, so she tweets Mr. Sixx, dear Mr. Sixx, thank you for meeting me on the red carpet. How can I become a rock star like you? So Nikki, a couple hours later, and he did admit later that he had to look her up why she was the Grand Marshal, but he did respond. He said, dear Eva, my dear, you've been a rock star your whole life. So that developed into a friendship, and then eventually you know, my mother went out to Los Angeles, and we were trying to limit her travel at this point in 2017 and 18, just because, you know, we had to be kind of selective. And so she went out there to do the Nikki Sixx radio show, and then she said, well, I'm going to do this thing called BuzzFeed. And I go, Mom, why are you wasting your time with these things? Well, it turns out the BuzzFeed video, which many of you may have seen, I forget the exact number, but it's like some 200 million people have seen it, maybe more. And another time I was wrong with my mother. I didn't always agree with everything she did, and this was another time that she was right and I was wrong. Couple other little stories here. You know, my mom touched a lot of people in a lot of different places. One of the things years ago, I was a podiatrist with the University of Evansville, and Evansville basketball team was coached by Jim Cruz. Many of you know Jim. Jim played for Bobby Coach Knight at IU, and then coached with Knight and most recently was the head coach at St. Louis a couple years ago and lives in central Indiana. And so Evansville had lost several games. This was in November, early December. And I had told Jim, Coach Cruz, a couple years earlier as a podiatrist about my parents, and he had some interest. He likes reading. The kids for the Evansville team would talk to kids about reading books. And anyway, so they were about to play in Terre Haute against Indiana State, and this was 1997, I believe. And I think they lost 8 of their last 9 games. So my mom's office, she was in real estate, was next door to the hotel where the team was staying. And so Coach Cruz calls her just kind of out of the blue and says, "Hey, Eva, I heard you're a good lecturer. Can you come over and give our team a lecture?" My mom says, "Lecture to a basketball team?" "Well, yeah, your son says you can lecture really well. And, we've lost 8 out of 9 games. Coaches are kind of at a loss here what to do." So my mom said, "Well, actually, I had a cancellation in my schedule, so I'll be over there in 20 minutes. So she goes over there. It's a typical college basketball team. You got some kids from the inner city. You got a couple foreign kids. You got some farm kids. Just a mixture, a plethora of kids from different backgrounds. And so she basically tells the kids about survival and kind of compares surviving a basketball season to surviving the Holocaust, obviously in different scales, but the idea to never give up, to always believe in yourself, just 3 life lessons. And so they said, "Well, Eva, tonight we play Indiana State. We want to have the kids read your book. Can you bring the book to the game? And you can bring your husband." And my mom says, "My husband, he's on his way to Mackey Arena. Purdue's got a game tonight." "Well, bring a friend." So my mom goes to the game, Indiana State and Evansville. And, I would never bother Coach Cruz at halftime. My mom was getting bored. Evansville was down by 10. So she goes down to the court and says, "Here, Coach, this is a Holman Center. Here are the books. I really got to get going." And Coach says, no, we're going to come back. We're going to come back. Can you stay to the end of the game?" So my mom says, "Okay, I'll stay." So she stays. They come back and win. And I wasn't there, but they bring her back to the locker room. The kids recite the 3 life lessons. They win their next game. They win their next game. They win multiple games. They end up kind of reviving their season, make the NIT tournament. And one second. And so, her message, and I'll just finish up here because I know there's going to be some questions. Her message, I think, was far-reaching. I think even in today's crazy world that we live in, that unfortunately we still have to deal with social unrest, prejudice, racism, etc., that I think a lot of her life lessons are very, very appropriate. One thing that I want to let everybody know, this is the first time it's been unveiled, so should have a drum roll here, but I now have created, with the help of the National Bobblehead Museum, a bobblehead of my mom. It's not perfect, but you get the idea. And if anybody wants one, I'm going to donate as many as you want to the Kiwanis Club, so you let Graham Honecker know, and I will get those to you within about 2 months. I'm ordering a bunch of them. This is the first one. I've been working with them since January, and I think that's all I got for you, Graham. So thanks, and appreciate any questions, and just very happy to be here.
Well, I really appreciate you and Ted being here, and we will get a bobblehead to everybody who is on the call today, including our non-Kiwanians. So I'm going to rely on Taylor to help capture the names. And a great reminder, I keep a reminder of Eva Core on my desk every day of those life lessons. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take about 10 minutes of questions, and then Ted and Alex have that special announcement that will bring them on at about 12:52, 12:53. I'll say this again then. You're really the first audience to hear this announcement. So a favor I'm going to ask is not to share this via social media or tweet it out, as Mrs. Core taught us how to do, until the announcement becomes official. But it is an exciting announcement. And so how about you guys take a few questions first, and then we'll make the announcement. So let's do questions via the chat, since we have a pretty big audience today. And as we're waiting, I'll throw out the first question. Ted and Alex, maybe if you guys can touch on the premieres, some of which have to be rescheduled due to the pandemic, but I believe there was one held at Parkland High School in Florida where there was a shooting, but if you can maybe talk about the premieres and perhaps some to come in the future.
Go ahead, Ted. You're muted.
Dude, how about that?
Good.
Can you hear me? Can
You're on.
anybody hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Yes, actually, that screening wasn't at Parkland School. It was a screening, though, that benefited Parkland School. It was held at the Broward County Jewish Center, and with a wonderful teacher down there. She was the teacher. She was teaching the Holocaust at Parkland School when the horrific shooting happened. And in fact, two of the kids in her classroom were murdered. Her name is Ivy Seamus, and she had received a special award there. In fact, it was an amazing screening. It was a full house, and we would just get so many full houses. We did, we had a great presentation at the Illinois Holocaust Museum in Chicago. We had a wonderful showing in New York, at Boston, at the sort of the flagship PBS station. It was almost a little bit hard to keep track of. We were flying around so much. Unfortunately, there were some for this fall that have had to be rescheduled. But it sounds like we're still a go in Phoenix. We still have hopes for something in Los Angeles. I had sort of figured that the desire would go down after a while, but that's really not been the case. And it's just a testament to Eva herself.
Yeah, the other thing is the week of when the pandemic started, March 11th to 12th, we had a screening scheduled in DePaul and Greencastle. We had a bunch of them in mid-March, but everything's been pretty much on hold. But yeah, we have one in Phoenix. So I think hopefully there'll be more interest, hopefully as things eventually will get better. And obviously Zoom is another option for us to, we have a September Zoom presentation.
I think Alex may be frozen here. So Ted, I'll text him and then we'll come back to him. Is the curriculum, Ted, available outside of Indiana?
Yes, it is now, and we love that, man. It is, again, credit to Beth Nairn on this wonderful. 12 life lessons like moral courage and forgiveness, and acceptance and empathy, with these real hands-on lessons that give the teachers a lot of ability to kind of go off-roading depending on their needs. And it's suitable for ages, for grades 5th through 12th and up, I guess, higher if you'd like. But we did put that up on PBS Learning Media. And I think it's just pbslearningmedia.org. Most teachers are pretty well aware of this site. And if you just Google EVA, or not Google EVA, but if you go to that site and then search for EVA, it comes up. And we're very hopeful that this will allow so many more students across the country to access it.
It somehow got disconnected. I think somebody asked me, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I think what stands out about growing up with your mom? Well, obviously there's not one thing. I would say that growing up with two parents who are Holocaust survivors in Terre Haute, Indiana by in itself is a very unusual way to grow up. Probably the biggest thing about my mother was just her ability to teach perseverance, not only to my sister and I, but really to anybody. And I think the other take-home message that I try to tell people is that, when something bad happens, you try to turn a negative into a positive. And I think the perseverance and trying to turn a negative into a positive has really been, the things that I'll carry on in the future and try to tell other people the same thing.
Great. While I'm waiting for a few more questions, Taylor says if you would like a bobblehead, and I'm going to email you, Taylor, to email her, tjacoby@indykiwanis.org. So if you want a bobblehead, make sure to let us know, and we will get that to you. Let's see. Another question, Alex. I'm truly inspired by the little I've heard about Eva. Aside from her books, what other aspects of her legacy was her family able to preserve? I particularly like her life's lessons.
As far as the family preserving her, I think we have a lot of things moving forward. Obviously, we still have the Candles Holocaust Museum in Terre Haute. There are other projects, one of which Ted mentioned with the Indiana Historical Society that the estate of Eva Kor is involved in. And so, the announcement today that we'll briefly mention at the end is another example of that. The biggest thing for me, and maybe I'm not directly answering this question, is, my mom was not, I didn't always agree with my mother on everything, but I know the facts. And since she's died, there have been 4 or 5 journalists, educators who have taken the opportunity once she has passed away to say things that were untrue about her. They don't know the facts about her forgiveness. They don't know the facts about the Oscar Gurney trial. Just little things that I think she's not here to defend herself, and I am. So I've kind of taken, to some extent, the mantle to try to make sure that, I think these are biased untruths. And yes, my mom wasn't perfect, but she didn't do things for a PR stunt, as somebody has suggested recently. So I think for me, it's just trying to protect my mom's legacy, recognizing that nobody's perfect. And quite frankly, that makes her even more special because I know she wasn't perfect.
Okay, how about one more question that I'm going to ask before we move to the big announcement? Alex, can you share what the Shoah Foundation did for your mom regarding the hologram?
So the USC, it's the USC Shoah Foundation, part of University of Southern California. Steven Spielberg created the Shoah Project, and then that grew into the USC Holocaust Shoah Project. They selected initially 12 to 13 Holocaust survivors around the world to do a hologram. And that hologram, you're able to interact with the person as if they're still here. And my mom obviously is no longer here. And there are 4 or 5 museums here in the United States, one of which is in Terre Haute with candles. The funny part about the story is, and I don't want to be too long here, is that my mom was initially not selected. She selected them. She heard about the project and pretty much volunteered to do it. And once Stephen Smith, and you can see this online, it's a very funny presentation, how he came to meet my mom and how he became so impressed with her ability to understand her place in history and how important it would be for her to tell her story in a hologram. So it's a really neat way to interact now with my mom, even though she's no longer here.
Got it. I do have one more question that I overlooked. Where are the virtual reality goggles available?
You're muted.
You're muted, Ted.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes.
One of these days I'll figure this out. The virtual reality headsets, as a matter of fact, Alex and I just delivered all of them over to the Historical Society, and they're not, will get quarantined. All the materials you take quarantined. So right now, all the stuff we brought over, I discovered, is in a 2-week quarantine room. But the virtual reality headsets will be available. It will be a major part of the Historical Society exhibit, which we still hope will open in January. And I'm happy to say, for those of you who have already tried it, it's pretty neat, but it's been markedly improved since then. And we actually have bigger plans for more of that kind of thing at the Historical Society exhibit. And I'm really happy that one of the Historical Society is doing is going to do a lot more outreach than they've done in the past, and a lot more educationally. And so they plan to do essentially what I was doing with Jessica earlier, which is school visits all over the state with these heads that can themselves. And I'll tell you, it really, all of the teachers were just amazed at how much their students were getting out of it. It's very simple, but you do feel like you are there, and you are there with EVA.
Okay, well, now the moment we've been waiting for. We wanted to hold the audience. Ted, I'm going to ask you to lean in. When you lean in, you sound better, you break up a little bit. So I want to make sure everybody hears this, but I'm going to turn it over to you gentlemen for the announcement.
Go ahead, Ted. And we would encourage, please, again, nobody should retweet this, no social media at all. Please do not in any way post on any social media. Go ahead, Ted.
You know, with all that buildup, I really feel like this might be a letdown. I think the special thing should be, not only are these bobbleheads, but as Alex showed you, they're actually all right. As we mentioned up top, I'm not sure why I'm breaking up. Is this any better?
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go. We would like to introduce the latest piece of the project, really the final piece as we prepare for this big handoff to the Historical Society. When I interviewed Governor Holcomb for the documentary a few years ago, he said that EVA was, and I'll quote, the perfect teacher for our time. And as Alex has mentioned a couple times earlier, has that ever been more true than this time now? I mean, here we are in this period of unprecedented racial reckoning, continued cases of anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination. This little Indiana woman stands as a acceptance. To this crippling pandemic, she brings, I would say, the ultimate example of determination and resilience and perseverance. And, you know, during this terribly divisive political climate, I would say that EVA represents integrity and respect and hope. Hope for humanity. I do believe that more than anything, that's what EVA stood for. And she stood taller than anyone I've ever seen. So we have decided to put a giant mural of EVA and her messages right in the heart of downtown Indianapolis, based on this photo that Taylor's about to show. That photo was taken outside of the Auschwitz barrack where some of the Nazi experiments were performed. And given that background, and look at that smile and that peace sign, we just thought that represents EVA so perfectly and so beautifully. We're not announced the building that the mural will go on yet, but that should come soon. It will definitely be downtown, and the mural will definitely be mammoth, and thousands of people will be met by this smiling face and peace sign every day. Janet Holcomb, we told her about it, and she texted me afterward when she learned. She said, now the rest of Indianapolis will see EVA as we do, a giant. The mural will be painted by Pamela Bliss, the same woman who painted the Reggie Miller and Kurt Vonnegut murals. She is expected to start in September and finish sometime in October, weather permitting. The project is being spearheaded by Dr. John Abrams, whom some of you might know. He's a longtime eye surgeon in town and a very close friend of EVA's, with help from me and Alex, Jessica Chapman, who I mentioned earlier, your intrepid president, Graham Honecker here, and a few others. Fundraising is ongoing. We've already received donations in Kiwanis, for which we are extremely grateful. We want this, we demand this will be a top quality piece of art that will stand tall and proud over the city for years to come. And considering EVA's international stature, we think that this can be a real destination spot, something that captures the ideals that our city and country aspire to right now. So yes, these are our big plans, And with that, I'll turn it to Alex to see if he has a comment on the mural. And if there's still time for questions, we'll welcome them.
Alex, now you're on mute.
I don't really have a comment other than I will say this. I told my dad about this a couple weeks ago. I said, Dad, do you want me to, when this is down up on the building, do you want me to take and show it to you? He goes, no, I'm low key. I'm low profile. I'll read about it in the newspaper. So, but thanks to everyone, and appreciate this opportunity. And Graham, thanks for allowing Ted and I to be a part of your Kiwanis Club, and appreciate all the support over the years.
Absolutely. We've got a couple minutes left, but if either one of you, Ted or Alex, want to stick around, we have a little bit of social time after 1 o'clock for Kiwanians, and maybe you can take another question or two. Couple things I want to say. I really want to thank Kiwanis. You've been very supportive of this initiative over the years. And we are trying to raise $30,000 for the mural. We're getting close. If you feel compelled to support it, Taylor, I think we've got the information. You can, and we'll put this in our newsletter next week as well, but you can make a check out to the 500 Festival Foundation with EVA mural in the memo line and send it to Jen Lowe, whose information is below. I want to thank Trent Cowles, who's made a very generous donation. I hope, Trent, you don't mind me saying that, but means a lot, and several others on the call have as well. So maybe, Taylor, if you can move that to the chat as I close out my remarks. A couple other thank yous. There have been some other people who joined us after my initial remarks, but Ina Shelley, former Dean of the College of Education, was a huge early supporter of this. We created a scholarship also for Alex's mother, Eva, here at Butler. Susan Kleiman, who I think had to jump off, but she also, a colleague at Butler, just tremendous help. Lloyd Wright, recently retired president of WFYI, tremendous partner, and whose brother is David Wright, our Kiwanian. Lisa Fried Maxwell, who's the vice president of advancement at Trine University. Bill Du Bois, alma mater. Lisa really backed me early in this project when, a lot of people are like, well, what are you doing? You need to focus on all these other things at Butler. Lisa gave me a lot of support. And finally, I'll close with a story. Eva Kor is known for her stance on forgiveness, but probably the most powerful moment for me, Eva Kor gave the best commencement address I've ever heard. She was our commencement speaker in 2015 at Hinkle Fieldhouse. And toward the end of her talk, she went over about 8 minutes. But if you knew Eva, you weren't surprised, and nobody cared because her talk was so good. But she said that when she was released from Auschwitz, she was looking around for her parents. She wanted to give her parents a hug, and unfortunately, they obviously were not there because they had been executed. And she called Alex up onto the stage and gave him a big hug and implored all of our graduates to go home that night and give them a hug. And so a little sentimental for me, but my mom's on the call, and I haven't been able to see her a lot during this pandemic. So, Mom, I'm giving you a virtual hug, and perhaps that's another lesson that we all can remember, is to appreciate our parents or our children for those families like the Kor family who were broken apart. So we're going to conclude there. If you want to stick around for a minute or two, Ted and Alex, thank you. Not only have you been great partners, they become two of my best friends, and I really appreciate you taking time to join us. By the way, we'll be making a donation in your names to Big Brothers Big Sisters of Indianapolis, and we will be sending you a certificate on that. And next week, hope you'll tune in. Another great presentation from Dr. Mark Leary of Duke University. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks.